Hello there, Anna Navarro. Hello there, Cha-Cha.
Hello, Mr. Brian.
All right, we are fresh off Memorial Day weekend break. Much to the chagrin of you fans, we were on vacation for a 4-day weekend. How was yours? You actually traveled. I did. I did nothing fun. Tell me about your trip.
Well, because I travel so much and I don't spend that much time at home, whenever we have a chunk of days off,
Sure.
I try to go somewhere with Al so that we reconnect and spend time together, and then I think twice about it afterwards. But we went to Mexico. We went to Tulum. There isn't a beach that I don't love. And I had never been to Tulum. I had been to Cancun, and I'd been to other places in the Riviera Maya, but I had not been there. It was terrific. It is. Have you been?
No, I haven't. I've been to Cabo. I've been to Acapulco. Never there.
Okay, this is much less fancy,
Yes,
and crazy than Cabo or Cancun. It is kind of like bohemian, rustic, chic type of thing. But there's not that many places you can stay that are affordable, where you are smack on the beach. And in Tulum, there are a lot of places that feel very authentic, that are not huge. So there's a lot of smaller hotels owned by Mexicans, run by Mexicans. So you don't see chain hotels in that strip. You see smaller hotels. The food was fantastic, and I love that. I mean, there were some Michelin guide mentioned restaurants, but they were Mexican. So they, a lot of times, if you go to Latin America or if you go to other countries, developing countries, they think that in order to make great food, it's got to be French food, or it's got to be Italian food, or this was authentic Mexican ingredients, but just done exquisitely. But I will tell you that it played with my head, because everybody that goes to Cancun looks like they could be walking the Paris walkways during Fashion Week. Okay.
Yes, I heard this from you over the weekend.
Al and I were like Shrek and Fiona in the middle of the Paris Fashion Week.
That's just not true.
I didn't even know they made swimsuits this small. These are things that literally are smaller than a bandana I would put on my head.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Cha-Cha could wear some of these outfits. And so it's a lot of couples deeply in love and passionate for each other, making out everywhere, wearing very little clothes with very fit, tight bodies, and Cha-Cha, Al, and me.
Well, see, now this brings up something for me, because I think it's an important part of a relationship. I'm far from a relationship expert, but I feel like the ability to enjoy vacation the same way is extraordinarily important in making a vacation work, because really I live for vacations, as
Right.
I think we've talked about. It's always, I plan one with my wife every year. We go away together, and without kids, at least once a year.
But when you say you plan one with your wife, who does the actual planning?
It depends. I like the planning, actually. I
But
like
is it
the
a joint
producing of it. I make
effort?
sure, I think I have a good feel for what she likes, what she doesn't, I run it by her, but generally, if the kids aren't involved, I'm doing the planning. If the kids are involved, she's got lots of flourishes for making sure the children are getting something either educational or enjoyable out of it. Like, we went to Paris, and, she set up the macaron class and things like that, But when it's the two of us, I'll make sure that we have activities that we both like. But for the most part, when we go on vacation, it's about a comfortable setting. I like to read. I like to go in the water. I like to have drinks.
Right.
And that's pretty much it. What is the vibe for you and Al, and are you in sync?
Well, depending, whether we're in sync or not doesn't matter, because I plan everything and I reserve everything and I do everything. He basically just asks, the thing that matters the most to him is, what clothes do I need to bring?
Sure.
Because he is a clothes whore, as we know. I have to worry about bringing Cha-Cha, which, by the way, takes a lot of planning and a lot of effort. And people ask me a lot how I can get Cha-Cha
Yes.
to come on these trips. And look, different countries have different requirements, right? So for Mexico, for example, they don't require a health certificate. A lot of times countries require that you go to the vet, get a health certificate that's certified by U.S. Department of agriculture. They require certain tests. They require certain vaccines. And then you've got to get the paperwork to bring her back and the paperwork for the airline. So a lot of planning goes into bringing Chacha. There are some countries that forget about it. Like I have basically erased Great Britain from my list of countries because bringing a dog into Great Britain is, what can I tell you?
Oh, really?
Like, bringing a bottle of booze into rehab. It is probably even harder to bring the dog into Great Britain. So whenever I know that I'm going to go somewhere, I call the vet and I say, okay, if I'm going to Spain, what does it require? If I'm going, and you have to time it right because there's tests and things that sometimes take days or months or weeks to get the results back. But as far as planning everything, I love the water. So I love to sail. I love to swim. I love to swim.
You're pretty adventurous,
in oceans
actually,
and
which
seas.
is surprising to me.
Well, there was one thing I thought about trying on this trip, kite surfing. You know
Really?
what this? Yeah. And I watched it, and it looked so beautiful. And and then I looked at it, and then I ordered another margarita and stayed
Sure,
on
yeah,
and
that
stayed on
sounds
my
right.
chaise lounge on the beach, reading a book.
And now, do you and Al connect in these times? Do you talk? Do you have meaningful
Yeah.
interactions? What do you do? What's the vibe?
Well, we have sex, probably
well.
a lot less than the 20-year-olds who are like sticking their tongues in each other's mouths in the middle of the
Sure.
beach. But we spend time together. We go to dinner. We talk about all sorts of things. He was annoyed with me in this one because I really, like I said to him, I really want to disconnect.
Yes, I remember.
I want to go somewhere where I want to disconnect, right? And so there was no TV. I'm telling you, the only people there are young people who want to be in the room having sex all day or then be on the beach. So I told Al I wanted to disconnect, and then I got there and there was no TV, which freaked me out for a
Sure.
little bit. And there was no cell phone service, which freaked me out for a little bit too. And then I thought to myself, well, honestly, my husband is here and my dog is here. What else do I need to feel comfortable? And it was blissful to be away from U.S. news in
Yeah,
that
sure.
kind of 24/7 way that I usually am. I usually
Yeah.
have
You're plugged in.
TV news on daily. I also got hacked a few weeks ago, and so have basically lost access to Twitter, and that's wonderful too. Because
I was
now
gonna say that's a wonderful thing.
I
Yeah.
don't tweet. I don't look at Twitter. I had no TV and I had no cell phone service. So all I was looking at was the New York Times once a day, a couple of times a day, and then Instagram, which is mostly pictures of my beautiful friends in bikinis or
Sure.
posting about food or their children in theater or whatever.
All right, so that sounds pretty good to me. But let's switch gears here for a minute, because speaking of news, we haven't really talked to you about President Biden's cancer diagnosis, and I know that hit very close to home for you. What was your reaction when you heard he had an aggressive form of prostate cancer?
Well, first I was sad.
Yeah.
I was sad because, listen, let's not sugarcoat this. His diagnosis is very tough.
Yeah.
It's stage 4, which means it's incurable. It's metastasized to his bones. This is not an easy diagnosis to hear. I had great empathy for him and his family, having been a family that's been affected by prostate cancer. And look, when as a wife, when you hear that your husband has prostate cancer, it's incredibly scary. And those first few days and weeks of after hearing the cancer diagnosis, it's just like a jumble in your brain where you're searching on the internet for all the information you can, and you're trying to get recommendations for treatments and doctors, and trying to figure out, and then you hear all of these different advices, right, from different doctors. Of course, they have the best access to the best doctors and the best medical treatment. I also thought, how ironic and how unfair that at a time when he should be enjoying this next chapter of his life without the pressures of being president, he's got to deal with this incredibly tough challenge. And how ironic that a man who has spent so much of his career advocating for cancer research. Remember, he started the cancer moonshot, which probably Trump has now defunded or will, is now suffering from this. That something that he tried to cure for all Americans, and now he has it. I also then when I heard, because I think like everyone, the question is, how could in such a short time? Because his last. I think he had his last presidential checkup. Remember, presidents have a physical checkup every year, and the results are made public. And I think his last one was February of 2024. So you ask yourself, how is it possible that in a year and a few months
Something
he could
so
have
aggressive could happen?
this?
Yeah.
And then the information came out. They put out the information that that he hadn't had a PSA test since, for, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. And a lot of people, I was so angry. I was livid. Honestly, a lot of things outraged me. But, I was so pissed at the people trying to turn this into some sort of conspiracy theory and cover up by the Bidens. What kind of family that loves each other, and the Bidens do, would cover up cancer and not get treatment so that he could continue being president? That is self-projection by Donald Trump Jr. and that ilk to think of that. And look, I understand it because you haven't turned 50 yet. But when you turn 50, it's like a full-time job to go get a bunch of different tests for the first time. And I remember when I was 50, I had to get a bunch of tests, including like a colonoscopy. And the results came in, and then the doctor told me, you don't have to get another one. You don't have to come back for 10 years. And I took the doctor at her word, right? And I think that whether you are a president or whether you are me or whether you are you, when we are with a doctor, we are a patient, and we take their advice. And so the guidelines for PSA tests, and PSA tests for this, certain PSA test for the PSA level in your blood. And if it starts going up suddenly for no reason, it's a early indicator that it might be prostate cancer. And that's how we knew with Al. And but the guidelines, the medical guidelines that many, if not most, doctors and medical organizations follow is that you don't need a PSA test after the age of 70.
Right.
Which I think is foolish, by the way. And I think it's, people are living to be 100. A lot of times when you have prostate cancer, you go to a doctor, and this happened to Al and me, where the doctor said, this grows very slowly. You don't have to do anything. You'll die of something else before prostate cancer kills you. And that's kind of like what they used to tell men.
Right.
And I said to Al, well, wait a minute. You could live to be 100. You're in good shape otherwise. And I don't know, but the idea of having cancer in you is a little scary.
Yeah,
so we're going to handle this the way we handle everything, proactively, and go after it with all guns. And I'm sure that's what Joe Biden is going to do. But it's a reminder that doctors miss things and that doctors make mistakes. We talked a few months ago about my friend, the former congressman, who died of pancreatic cancer. That guy, Lincoln, went to the doctor 8 times, and it took 11 months for them to diagnose it because they didn't do a scan. They kept giving him different diagnoses. So I think, even if you're 70 and they tell you don't need a mammogram, get the mammogram. Even if you're 70 and they tell you shouldn't get the PSA exam, get the PSA exam. So we have to be our best and strongest advocates. And, I know Joe Biden well. He is an optimist. He's going to give this his all. He's got, the things that you need the most when you're fighting cancer. You need access to great health care. Not every American has that.
That's right.
Fortunately, he does. You need a structure around you to support you. Going through cancer or serious illness alone is incredibly hard. And he has that. He has an incredibly supporting, loving family. I communicated with his sister and his daughter after this, and it wasn't a surprise to me that Valerie, his sister, who's been with him at every turn in his life, at such difficult things he's gone through, said to me, "I'm putting on my warrior garb, and we're ready to fight."
Yeah.
And
That's what families do. Yeah.
and it's also, listen, it's also sad because it's like, damn it, how much more does Joe Biden have to go through? How much more? You know, this is a guy who lost his first wife, who lost his baby daughter, who lost his son Bo to cancer, who had to deal with the addiction of Hunter, who, you know, I mean, it's just like, come on, can he catch a break? So I wish him the best. I know there's, you know, new treatments. And it's also a reminder that this thing that Trump is doing of defunding medical research will and can affect us all. And we should all be worried about all of this defunding of scientific research and grants that are going on in the universities and in the, you know, at the NIH and the medical organizations. It's just, it's wrong. It is one of the stupidest, most short-sighted things. And with medical trials, it's not like turning a light on and off. Once you stop a medical trial, getting it back going will take years. And the years that you've invested in it are for nothing.
Well, cancer affects everybody. I don't know a single person isn't touched by it. So hopefully this maybe will stop some of those things from being.
And also it's a reminder that for men who are a little squishy about their prostate and getting exams and tested, you know, to get tested.
It's not fun. Yeah.
To go, come on.
I'm just saying it's not fun.
Can I tell you something? Men are wimps.
Yes.
I mean, a prostate exam in comparison to what a woman goes through at a gynecologist is literally nothing. Okay.
It's closer than you think. But yeah, it's.
Oh, please.
All right.
Oh,
all right.
Look at you.
I'm just saying it's not my favorite. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, but people need to get him.
They do. 100%.
Mammograms every
I do
year,
them too.
prostate exams every year.
All right, today we talked about President Trump's Memorial Day speeches and his post on Truth Social where he wished everyone
feels like a prostate exam.
A happy Memorial Day, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country. Do you think there's any kind of strategy here, or is this just...
I think the guy has just no impulse control. I mean, you would think that if he loves, you know, yes, does he like to troll the media? Yes. But would you not think that there should be like some sacred days, like maybe, you know, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, 4th of July,
Christmas.
You know, if you're president of the United States, maybe there should be some days that are sacrosanct and you don't use, you know, to troll Americans. And here's what I don't get about Trump. Well, there's a lot of things I don't get anything about Trump. You know, I thankfully I don't understand Trump. I don't speak Trump, and I will never stop denouncing him. But one of the things that really befuddles me is, my God, after a disastrous first term that ended so badly with January 6th, he gets a second shot. You would think maybe somewhere deep inside he'd say, you know what? Let me do this well. Let me be unifying. Let me be patriotic. But instead, it was what he told us he was going to do. Be vindictive and about retribution. And so it's just this idea that he can't put that revenge and that vindictiveness down even for one day. And that he's using Memorial Day to attack Joe Biden, who, for the love of God, just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I mean, you know, last week Trump tweeted for like 30 seconds he was a decent human being, tweeting sympathies and prayers and support for Biden. But that lasted, you know, nothing. And so I just, it's like, you know, his decency has the shelf life of ice cream in a Florida summer. It's, you know, it's ridiculous. And I think it's incredibly disrespectful. And that long post, it was a very long post. So I'm in Mexico and I'm reading this post on Instagram and I think to myself, this can't be real. And so many times that happens to me where I read something that Trump puts out or that Trump has said, and I go and look up whether it's actually real, because I think somebody made it up, because I just can't in my head fathom how the president of the United States could issue that as a Memorial Day statement. And then, and it's like he starts by saying Happy Memorial Day. You dolt. Don't you realize this is a holiday about people who paid, Americans who paid the ultimate sacrifice, people who've died? This is not a happy
There are people who say
day.
that, but I
it's
hear
not,
you.
Well, it's not appropriate to say Happy Memorial Day.
I don't mean to digress, but the fact that the dog Cha-Cha is sleeping right now while you're in a rage spiral, this must be like white noise for the dog. She must be so used to it that this is fired up Anna Navarro that it just puts her calm and asleep and at rest.
Listen, this dog is so calm and asleep. I took her to the Broadway show. We had Sarah Snook on today. She's got this Broadway show about Dorian Gray. There's like shooting in the show where like guns go off, okay? Many times. I don't know. There's like 12 shots that go off. Cha-Cha didn't flinch.
It's very impressive. Before we go, I wanted to talk about Shakira. You made it to Shakira. It finally happened.
And I didn't know if I was going to make it the second time because I went to MetLife.
You went twice? Oh, no, this time you mean. Yeah.
But I am going to go twice because I'm going to go to Miami too. I plan to if I don't jinx it. But
I warned you against MetLife because it's a nightmare over there.
Well, and it was the weekend when there was a transit strike.
Yes.
So there were no trains and no trains and no buses.
Right.
And so everybody had to drive there, I guess. Anyways, I made it to Shakira despite the strike, despite the this, despite the that, and I was worried because when we got there, and we got there late, the stadium was kind of empty. And I thought, oh, hell, will this transit strike mean an empty stadium? But it got full. It was packed to the rafters. And it's honestly, that Shakira concert, the concert's name is Las Mujeres Ya No Lloran. Women don't cry. Women make money. And remember, this kind of came out. She hadn't been on tour.
Right.
For ages, like 7 or 8 years. And this came out of that song that was the song that she wrote after her husband, the football player Piqué, cheated on her. And it became this incredible hit and anthem for women. And so she goes back. And you know what else I like about her concert? She does a lot of her old songs that I know. Right. Because I hate it when like you love an artist and you go to their concert and they sing things that you like. I don't know this song. Why you're not singing?
I have a 6-song rule.
Favorite.
For me to go to a concert, I have to know and love 6 songs from the artist. Otherwise, I think it's just too boring.
Okay, and before we go, drinking game alert. I'm about to mention Gloria Estefan.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Gloria Estefan mentioned. Go ahead.
Yesterday, she was on the AMAs, and it was wonderful because she's celebrating 50 years of career. Think about how hard it is to stay relevant in the musical industry.
Yep.
40 years of the song Conga.
That's very impressive.
Do you know Conga?
I do. So one of my earliest memories of my...
You're not old enough to know
I'm
Conga.
old enough to know it because I'm in my 40s, late 40s. And I remember my parents having a party and my sister and I at the top of the stairs watching down through like a dog gate as the conga was blasting and there was a conga line going through.
Give me a few lines.
Do the conga any longer. Any longer. That whole album was on all the time. Yeah.
So she performed yesterday at the AMAs. She hadn't been at the AMAs for 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I was, I was really proud of her doing this. And I'm really proud of her. I'm really proud of Shakira for putting, Latin rhythms, taking them all over the world and representing and breaking glass ceilings. And frankly, because of people like Gloria Estefan, who did a crossover and was able to get American fans singing her rhythms 50 years ago, is that today we have a Shakira and a Karol G and, and all of these other artists that have gone through the doors that Gloria and Emilio opened. So I was just, my little Latino heart was bursting with joy.
Well, that's great. And just so she doesn't feel left out, I'm proud of Eva Longoria.
I'm pissed at her.
Really? What happened?
She's in France being happy.
Yeah, that'll do it.
She's like not a subject, not victimized by American youth. And like every time I send her something, she's like, I'm out of the loop. I'm like, I hate you.
Yeah, there you go.
And, looking beautiful and, searching for France. She's going all over France, eating the most wonderful food.
I thought it was Spain. She's in France now?
Now she's searching for France.
All right.
She found Spain. She found
Found
Mexico.
Spain.
She found Spain.
Now she's looking for France.
Searching for France. While we are here talking about Donald Trump's rants on Memorial Day.
We should get her a map. All right. Thank you for joining me today, Anna. Tomorrow I'll be back with Joy Behar, and we will see you then.